Do you have any like restaurant facilities management and maintenance horror stories? Like anything that you could share that's just like a crazy story that happened?
I got a call from a guy one night from a location in Naples, Florida, about 1 o'clock in the morning. And I always said, you call me 24/7. You call me after midnight, it better be good. Better be good, okay? If the faucet's broke, we're going to have a conversation, you know. And he said, hey, Danny, I got a problem. I said, what? He goes, the police are here. And I'm like, did you get robbed? And he said, no. He said, but the jewelry store next door, they said there's a bomb.
Welcome to CMMS Radio, a podcast and general resource for all things CMMS, computerized maintenance management software, from selection to implementation to help you make better choices and have a successful CMMS journey. We'll bring in experts along the way to help us learn more about CMMS, facilities operations, and much more. If you need help with the CMMS project, send a message at CMMSradio.com using the What's on Your Mind link. Suggest a topic, share your CMMS story, or ask questions. Thank you for tuning in, everyone. Today, we're going to meet Danny Koontz. He is Director of Relationship Management at Windy City Equipment. He's a member of the Advisory Council for the Restaurant Facility Management Association, and he's the host of the FM Corner podcast. Danny, welcome to CMMS Radio.
Thank you, Greg. Certainly happy to be here. Looking forward to the conversation.
Yeah, and I know you and I have traded some comments online on LinkedIn. I've seen what you're doing. I've had Josh Zolan from WCE. He's the CEO. He's been on the podcast before once or twice, and so it's good for us to connect. And what I want to start out with, pretty standard question, but how did you get into this game, this wide world of facilities maintenance and facilities management? And you go back as far as you want and then kind of bring us up to today, present day, and what you're doing.
I started, I was in college at University of Tennessee, and I had been working at Pizza Hut, and I worked every Friday and Saturday night. Well, when you're very young and single and in college, working Friday, Saturday night at a pizza place till 2 a.m. is not very good. So a buddy of mine who had worked at Pizza Hut was now working at Ruby Tuesday in their commissary. This is in 1978. Ruby Tuesday had 6 restaurants. And she called and said, hey, you want to work in the commissary / warehouse? I'm like, yeah. I said, but I got to go to school. She goes, yeah. When you finish school, you come here and work in the afternoons. I said, okay, sure. And it gets me out of Friday and Saturday night. So, I asked the question that everybody asks, do you get paid every Friday? And she said, yeah. I said, great. I'm your guy. And so I started working there in the commissary, cooking food, soups, quiche, things like that, and loading trucks. And they came along and they said, do you want to be the purchasing guy? Brand new company now, very small. Sure. How hard can it be? You make a deal. It's not hard. I got it. Okay. So I started purchasing. I learned what small wares was. I knew equipment. And I did that for about a year and a half. And they came and said, you want to be the facility guy? So, well, I don't fix things. They're like, we don't care. Your job is to call people and find out who to do it and get it done. Yeah, no problem. I'm your guy. And that's my entrance into facilities. And I'm not a technical person by any stretch. I'm a conversation person with people. I move people to try to get them where I need them to be. But I'm not technical. I don't try to tell people how to fix stuff. You're the expert. I'm paying you. You tell me. And then I'm going to hold you accountable to the results. And so I started doing that, and Ruby Tuesday started growing. Got bought by Morrison Cafeteria, which is an old cafeteria company in Alabama, Mobile, Alabama, years ago. Got transferred, moved to Mobile, spent 12 years in Mobile, then moved back to Tennessee when Ruby Tuesday split as its own company. And Ruby Tuesday got bought by Morrison because Morrison had a ton of money and no future, and Ruby's had a great future and no money. It's the perfect marriage. So I did facilities. I also did all the purchasing. I bought everything and every Ruby Tuesday there is anywhere up until 2013. So spent 35 years there. I managed up to 950 locations with no facility managers in the field. I had 5 people in the office. That was it. And
Wow.
so we did that. And then owner of Ruby's left, different folks come in and management changes. And so people change. And did a couple of things and ended up going to work for Collier Restaurant Group, 2016. It's family owned up in the mountains of Tennessee. If you've ever been to Great Smoky Mountains, Sevierville, Gatlinburg, Pigeon Forge, touristy area. And they had a bunch of different restaurants. Some they owned, some they were a partner in. And I went to work for them in 2016 up until COVID hit. And when COVID hit, if you're doing 95% tourist and there's no tourist, there's no business. And they had to make some cuts. And so that was it. So ended up, I had done a couple of podcasts with Josh, never met, but we had done a couple of podcasts and I talked about a facility manager and the change and what's going on with COVID. And that was the first one. The second one was after I had, been let go because of no volume in business. And he finally said, "Do you want to come to work for me?" I said, "Not in Phoenix." And he said, "No, you can work from home." And he said, "You have a Rolodex that most people don't have." And I said, "So you want my Rolodex?" He said, "No, I don't want your Rolodex. I want to learn how you got it." And I thought that was very interesting. And so I agreed to do director relationship management. It involves some sales. I'm not a salesperson, but I know that side of the business, and also do a lot of work with customers and training for our teams, things like that. Speaking from the other side, I know the customer side. Now I'm learning the service side from being on the inside, and I think that helps when you deal with facility managers, because the one thing I can tell them, I can't tell them we're better than everybody. I can't tell them we're going to be cheaper. I can't do all those things. What I can say is I've been you, and I know what it means. And I know what it means to have your boss down your throat. I know what it means to have your budget whacked by $1 million in one stroke of a pen. I know those things. And I think that brings some value. So hoping that I'm bringing value to Windy City now from the other side of the coin. That's a way long-winded answer to your question.
It's it's exactly what I was hoping to hear, because it gives us a view to not just how you got here, but the things you experienced as you got here. And that is the reality of when we're running businesses, we're dealing with facilities, we're dealing with maintenance, whether you've turned the wrenches or not. It really does matter that you've done somebody's job and you're trying to help them and you understand them. That in and of itself is where the value really is. And there's too many organizations out there. Sure, people got to start. Somebody comes from one industry to another and they're in here doing our relationship management and they figure it out and they're good at it. That can happen. But when you really know where somebody's been and you've done it over a period of time where you've seen so much change in the industry, the people, the quality of the people, the quality of the vendors, the quality of the equipment itself, you start to see the really big picture that they might not, but you can also relate to them and help guide them. So
Sure.
through all this experience, and you and I were talking a little bit at the beginning, I know you've had exposure to various CMMS platforms and had to do, the selection, the deployment, and leveraging it properly so that you can get your job done and get everybody moving in the right way. What I'm curious about is, without naming any products,
Sure.
can you tell us, just in your opinion, what value does a CMMS, a computerized maintenance management software or something similar, bring to that environment, that business, when you're running, say, for example, 900 locations?
First is some organization, because at 900 locations, I'm scrambling. I literally, my day is, hey, Danny, this is Jim in Pembroke Pines, North Carolina. I got a fryer down. It's 5 years old. It's going to cost $2,700 to fix. The lease is up in 2038, and we do 2.5 million. What do you want to do? And I got 1 minute to make that call. Either fix it or order a new one. And I go to the next one. And you do that over and over and over. It's all day, every day. And then trying to remember, okay, I went to Pembroke Pines 5 years ago. Let me think about the location. Is there anything weird? You can't do that from memory at all. And so what the platforms did is put some structure to it, where in the morning I came in and I looked at what my teams have been doing, and I looked at the screen and I had the board and I could see and I could see, okay, I'm going to mark 10 of these because I may need to get in the middle. My team doesn't need me yet and I don't want to jump in, but I might end up in the middle of this one, so I'm going to mark it so I can look at it. The other thing it does is it helps bring some structure to your teams, because prior to that, it's pretty much run and gun and it's Wild West. I can't get anybody to fix my fryer, so I call my cousin. What does he do? He works on cars. He could work on okay, maybe not. And then there's a whole hodgepodge of who worked on it, what they do it, all that kind of stuff. What this does is brings everybody in, because whoever your provider is, I'm going to sit down with all the vendors and say, okay, as we go forward, you will do work inside the network. You will bill inside the network. I'm guaranteeing I'm going to pay you, but you're going to bill it through the network. And that's the number one thing the vendors ever always wanted to know. Who pays me? Okay, we'll pay you, not the provider. We'll pay you, but it's going through the provider. Okay, that settles everybody down. Now, you'll have some people who won't. I'm not going to do this, or I'm mom and pops, you lose. Some of the mom and pop vendors, you lose. The other thing it does is it sure makes my restaurants manage to a system, because the first time, the story I told you before, where a guy called the vendor and the vendor couldn't get there, so he called his cousin. There's only one problem with that. I can't pay your cousin. He's not in the network. Do that one time, and it will spread like wildfire, and you won't have a problem anymore. Because everybody talks, hey, don't go outside the system. You can't pay the guy. Or you need to pick up the phone and call this company and tell them you can't pay them because you went outside the network. Just once. They'll get it. So you do a couple things. One, my team's more organized. The vendors are more organized. And the operations team is more organized because everything's on paper. Okay. In the old days, prior to that, I could call and say, how about Greg's company? Where are they? I've called Greg for 5 days and he won't answer the phone. Is that true? Who knows? When I have a platform and everything's noted, I know who called and when, and I know what the notes say. And so you fix some of those problems that you're apt to have with any restaurant manager. If they get put in a bind, have a tendency sometimes to spin you a story.
Yeah.
And the whole key is to know who's spinning you stories and fix it. And one of the things I always worked on was, I get it. Mistakes are made. Things happen. If you're 100% honest and transparent with me, I'll help you. If you fake something to tell me a story, we're going to have a problem. A big one. Because at the end of the day, I'm sorry, but I control all the money. So that's how it works. Let's talk.
Yeah.
And let's be honest, and I'll help you. And then you got to help them. You can't say it, you got to do it. But that's where I think the platforms help, because you could take a look, and as you build history inside that, you could take a quick snapshot. You could see what was done on a particular piece, and you could see what the history was, and you could set your calls up as priority 1, priority 2, priority 3. Why are you telling me you have an emergency to clean your windows? No, you don't. I mean, come on. And so there was just so much automation that you could do in it at a time when it was literally lots of phone calls and
Yeah.
writing notes and things like that. And there's no way to keep up with that.
So with everything that you're saying, it just reminds me of, number one, you're eliminating guesswork so that you can use your brain for other stuff, because now you don't have to go find these things and wonder what happened and call 10 people and wait 3, 4, 5 days to hear back.
Mm-hmm.
You got vendors that are participating, and that gives you the documentation necessary to pay them. They love that. And then you've got a way for your people to learn how to be accountable and realize it's not because I'm being babysat, but it's because I need to document what I do so that we know how our restaurant really runs and when things fail and when they don't and who did this, that, and the other thing. So I'm curious, what were some of the common barriers or kind of resistance you got from people using the platform? Were they resistant to it? And if they were, how did you get them to kind of buy in and start using the system?
We traveled all over the country, and we did district regional meetings where we kind of went through the system and we showed them what to do. And I had two guys on my team kind of led that. And they were the nuts and bolts who said, this is what you do. I'm the sales guy out front saying, we're doing this.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm the only facility guy any of you that have ever worked here have ever had, because that was the truth. I've
Mm-hmm.
been in this company longer than anybody that works in any building. I've been here. I'm your guy. I wouldn't be doing this if it wasn't a good idea. You know that. And so you did that piece. Now you got some pushback from managers because there were vendors, as I said, mom and pop, and they didn't do the computer and they didn't do certain things. It's part of business changing. They were great people, but they're not fitting in what we're trying to do.
Yeah.
So you got a little push from that. You got people who, it's my restaurant and I want to do it the way I want. Right. I understand, but it's my budget, not yours. And the simple message I tried to tell everybody when I was out and about, if you do it right, this will be easy for you. It will be easy. If you buck it and you fight it hard and you're looking for everything that can be wrong, because that's how you've been doing it, it won't work. And we're going to have to talk. But the company's going to this. And this is how it's going to be done. You're not picking up the phone and saying, I want a new fryer. It's not.
Yeah, put it in the system.
Right. If I got a question, I'll call you about it and we'll talk about it. But I'm not writing down, order Jimmy a new fryer. That's not what we're doing.
Yeah.
And so you got tested, and there were people that didn't like it. The other thing you got to do is you got to go from the top down. You got to go to all the directors, the regional vice presidents, and the VPs, and going, all right, look, gang, here's the deal. Y'all got to back me here. This is we're doing this. This came from the very top. We are doing it. And if we end up doing it with company A and it doesn't work, we'll go to company B. But at the end of the day, we are going to have a system and we're going to do it. So you need to get on board, and then you can help manage down, because this is not optional. It's kind of like, here's a new uniform. Whatever it is, polo shirt and jeans, that's it. We're not changing that. There's no fighting it. It's done. And over time it works, and you have to, when people are struggling, you have to be able to get in there and help them and teach them. Our provider had a group of people who helped teach. That was important for 6 months. And we rolled it out in phases. We did 70 stores as a 6-month test, just so we could figure out how it all worked. Because I wanted I had to have all the answers to the questions before I got it rolled everywhere. So that was kind of how we did it.
I think the smart thing about that is when you do that phased approach and you pick a group and say, hey, we're going to roll these out. We're going to roll these out right. We're going to make some mistakes. We're going to learn. We're going to figure out who's bought in, who's not. We're going to fix all that stuff. And now those other, 850 are going to be phased in. Now we're going to do 100 more, 200 more, and on like that. And we're really creating that footprint of that process across our national portfolio. And it works the same if you got 10 restaurants and you start with one, and or if you got 10 facilities, you start with one, get it just right, and then now you do two more, and on like that. You keep learning and improving, so it's great. I wanted to ask you, this is kind of a weird question, but considering all of your experience, without naming any like names of people or anything like that, do you have any like restaurant facilities management and maintenance horror stories, like anything that you could share that's just like a crazy story that happened?
I got a call from a guy one night from a location in Naples, Florida, about 1 o'clock in the morning. And I always said, you call me 24/7. You call me after midnight, it better be good. Better be good, okay? If the faucet's broke, we're going to have a conversation, you know. And he said, hey, Danny, I got a problem. I said, what? He goes, the police are here. And I'm like, did you get robbed? And he said, no. He said, but the jewelry store next door, they said there's a bomb. What do you think I should do? And I thought for about 10 seconds, and I said, this is the best teaching moment I've ever had. Run like hell. And that's exactly what I told him. But the Ruby Skies teams were so entwined, and I'm glad for this. When in doubt, call Danny. I was good with it. I mean, I was laughing about it, but good with it. I'll tell you another quick one. My very early in my career, when I was still working in the warehouse and doing some purchasing, we had a second concept called L&N Seafood Grill. We had one location. They had green carpet. Ruby Tuesday had blue. This is back in the carpet days. One of my first purchase orders was to order 90 yards of carpet of green for this restaurant. I had another zero. I ordered 900. We got one building. My boss walked in and he goes, hey, I think you made a little mistake. I'm like, what are you talking about? He goes, you were supposed to order 90 yards of carpet. And I said, I did. He said, handed it to me. He said, 900. He said, my problem is I only have one building. And I mean, I'm getting fired. I know I am. And I'm like, give me 24 hours. I start calling around to other facility people going, I got a sale on green carpet. And I'll, and give it to you. And I went to the manufacturer and I begged, and I'll pay you storage and I'll do this and I'll do that. And somehow work my way out of it. But that's a couple of, and there's all kinds. I mean, there are stories that just you almost can't believe until you've been there, and then you go, okay, I got it. So
there's a lot that happens in that industry that much of the time we can't talk about it on a podcast. Just craziest things you ever heard. And my big one for the restaurant industry, usually I wouldn't interject and then put a story on top of somebody else's, but there was a restaurant. This was way back when I was a young buck. I was a dishwasher. And the guy that used to take care of the place overnight, as we were wrapping up, winding down, we'd be heading home 1 in the morning, 1:30, whatever. This guy come back to work the next day. This guy went up to the bandsaw for the meat, because when restaurants bring in the food, they bring in racks of ribs, and those got to get cut down, and other meats have to get prepared before they can start going into prep. And I guess he was disappointed about something in his life, and he went like that and just jammed it in there, and it got all the way up to his elbow. That's my restaurant horror story. And he survived.
Wow.
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, he was mad about something.
Most of the things you can't talk about, and it was one of the things I can remember having a conversation with the president of the company one time, and he called me about something. He goes, do you know about this? I'm like, yeah. Why didn't you tell me? I said, you didn't ask me. I said, there's a lot of things that go on in your restaurants that you probably would be better served not to know. I know those things, but I am also with these people all the time. These are my customers. My job's not to run to tell you something that happened. If you ever ask me point blank, I won't lie to you. I won't. I'll tell you the truth. But if you don't ask, I'm not telling you. And trust me, it's better off that you don't know. Anyway,
Yeah.
okay, it's good enough because you don't want me to. You really
Yeah.
don't. Those,
Yeah.
those are for me just to keep, you know.
There you go. Plus, your people appreciate that too, that are
Yeah,
working for you. And
yeah,
so I want to switch gears a little bit. And so you have a podcast, and I wanted to ask you specifically, it's FM Corner.
yes,
I
sir.
wanted to ask you, what is your favorite thing about hosting FM Corner?
The ability to take lessons learned through my career and try to share it with people. You had mentioned RIPMA early on. I've been heavily involved in RIPMA since the day it began. I went to the original meeting and said, we might want to form an organization for facility people. Cool. I could steal other people's six things, you know. They got a great idea. I could sit there and listen to it and go, wow, how good is that?
Yeah.
And that was it. And so I've been heavily involved in that. I've spent a lot of time now. I'm advisory council and old people's groups, what I call it. But just the ability to talk to people, and maybe sometimes, you know, when you do an episode and somebody said that mattered to me and that meant something, and maybe they don't want to hold their hand up and ask a lot of people, but they could listen to my episode quietly and nobody ever knows. But
Yeah.
maybe there was something there that they say that helped. And I think the other thing, Greg, is I try to be brutally honest. I know what I'm good at and I know what I'm not. And I try to talk about both. Um, and to try to give it a sense of reality with people, but really just that thing of this is a lesson that I learned and I am passing it on. And hopefully, if you're got that fork in the road someday, maybe something on there I said will help you take the right direction. That's
Yeah.
really
That's good stuff. And that's important. I think the reason I asked the question is this thing that we get the privilege of doing, connecting with people, talking about past, present, and even the future, and scenarios we've been in, situations we've been in, whether we got it right or got it wrong, it might help somebody. And it's cool if you hear about it, but if you don't and you know it was real, that feels really good. And I think that's, I'm not surprised to hear that. And there's a lot of knowledge and wisdom in that head of yours and that life you've lived that people are going to need. And if we don't curate it somehow, then it's gone. And that's the real tragedy. So at least they have it and they could find an episode and do something with it or not, but it's there. So I think that's really good because
I even enjoy sometimes when people disagree and say, I see that different. I'm like, okay, let's talk about it. I mean, you know,
yes,
everybody is not. And if you have a different view or something like that, the fact that you're still taking the time, you know, to let me know or speak about it, that's important too. Because certainly I'm not saying how I look at something is right. It's my opinion. It's how I see some things. A lot of it's lessons learned. You know, there's nothing better than when you get knocked down. How do you get back up, and do you figure out a different way to go, and
yeah.
and still get the job done? You know, and I like that with people. It's the ability to hopefully try to help other people.
Yeah, and that's you make a good point when it comes to, we don't have to agree and we don't have to disagree, or we don't have to agree. We don't have to agree. We don't have to agree to disagree. We can go on a journey and explore these things and kind of say, well, what would you have done different, or what do you see that's missing from that story or that experience? And we're all kind of going together because
Sure.
that's the whole point here is we're doing this because we enjoy it, but we're also doing it with the intent that somebody's going to see or hear something that might get them thinking. And even if it's not exactly right, maybe they're like, well, nah, I don't see it that way, but I see what you're talking about, but I like it this way. It does something for somebody. I think that's really good.
Yeah, and we
So
did it right at a time that was right around COVID when I started in 2020.
yeah,
And Josh said, hey, I think this would be a really good idea. And I never thought about it and would never have thought about it. And he said, let's do it. You spoke to groups and stuff like that. It's kind of the same thing, but it's more, I said, sure. And we've started working on it. We started, so we've been doing it for quite a while. And now we're adding live podcast, as a second piece, um, which I'm new to it and I'm still learning, but it's just conversations,
yeah,
and that's literally what you're doing. And hopefully that's going to go well too, where people can just listen to a couple people talk.
yeah. I think people like it because if it's a real conversation and everybody can start to forget that they're on camera and people are going to see it or hear it, you really get to some good stuff, some good takeaways, some good insights, uh, at least a little bit of fun, a couple of laughs, maybe a few cringeworthy moments and all that good stuff. So I wanted to ask real quick about WCE and any kind of big things that are happening right now, like these days, that people need to know about when it comes to Windy City equipment.
I think we're trying to grow and expand. We're working on our processes. You got to have your processes in place, buttoned down before you do that. Um, we're currently in 4 markets. Phoenix is the main. Tucson, Houston, Texas is about a 4-year-old market, 4 or 5, doing very well. Albuquerque, New Mexico is the other. That's probably the one we're working on now to try to strengthen because they got crushed in COVID. New Mexico was hard, and we had just opened, and we never really had a chance to kind of grow it, to get out there because of COVID and what was going on. So it's out there now, and we're working on growing it, and then we have some other, markets down the road we would like to get to. Lots of people getting bought these days, so the smaller top companies and so on, it's hard, you know,
Oh, yeah.
from pricing points and things like that. So when you look at that, your processes have to be good. You have to deliver really good service that people in the locations like, and make a difference
Mm-hmm.
above and beyond just fixing it. What else are you doing? And so we're doing some of that, and at the same time we're working on our internal teams, getting them more up to speed. I speak to them sometimes about how a customer would view things, uh, trying to grow them at the same time. So, and Josh is out on the speaking market. I mean, he does a lot of that, does his own podcasts. He has his own academies doing, member of Sufesa now, on the board. So the getting the Windy City name out and across, even though we're just in certain locations, is still huge.
Yeah.
Growing our customer base, picking the right customers. There is such a thing as right customers that
Oh, yeah.
fit, and so we're trying to do that, but all in just looking to strengthen, getting our name out there. He's doing it on his end. I'm trying to do it on FM Corner and RIFMA, and then give us opportunities as we continue to try to grow. And
Yeah.
grow is a
Yeah.
lot of things besides more buildings and more cities, but
Of
it's
course.
better customers, more services to those customers, better way of doing it. You got to find a
Yeah.
niche. You've got to have you got to have something that the customers want, and that's what we're working really hard for.
Yeah. And I see it. I watch online. I see things that Josh puts out. I see you putting out the podcast. We've had this great conversation here. And I just like to kind of cover a lot of different things, not a real structured format, more of a couple of guys just chopping it up. And I want to move us into what I call the fun question segment
All right.
for first time guests on CMMS radio. So these are there's no wrong answers on any of these. It's just some fun stuff to kind of get to know you and your perspective. Not that we haven't done that already, but number one, what is your favorite music?
Rock and roll.
All right. Rock and
Rock and
roll is a
roll.
winner every time.
Rock and roll.
Second question. What is your favorite sport or hobby? And if it's a sport, it doesn't necessarily have to be one that you play. It could be one that you like to watch or kind of support.
Football. My son, I have a special needs son, and he coaches 9 and 10-year-olds. And that is one of the most coolest things we've ever done. And he uh, graduated and works now, but we go to his high school football games, and he's been over 300 straight games. That's over 22 years of never missing a game. That's a lot.
Yeah, it is. That is
And
a lot.
he and I do it every week together. That's special. So we're both big into sports. So football, hobbies, play golf.
All
Play
right.
golf. Love to play
Yeah.
golf.
There's one you'll never master.
No, but it keeps you coming back.
Yeah. Yeah. I got a lot of friends that do that. And I'm like, I can't do it, man. After the third hole, I'm done. I'll drive the cart. But I like it. It's good stuff. And so the final question in the fun question segment, and there are no wrong answers on this. I'd like to hear your thoughts, your philosophy, your opinion, your approach to this idea of work-life balance.
Funny, because work-life balance for me during the Ruby Tuesday career was none. Uh, 24/7. I've made a joke many years. I carried my phone to the mailbox, to the dinner table, to the bathroom, everywhere we went. If we went to a restaurant, my wife would say I critiqued the restaurant, the facilities the whole time we're there. I mean, I worked all the time and I traveled all the time. So for much of that 35 years, I left on Monday and came home on Friday every week, every week. So when I started to go to work for Josh at Windy City, and I was going to work remote, hardest part was going to work it out between my wife and I because she's pretty used to me being gone every week, and now I'm home every day, and I'm in
Yeah.
the same house every day, all day. So that was different. So for me, that was hard. I certainly understand younger facility managers and people today who want to balance their work with time away. And in other words, when I'm off the clock, I'm done. I, I don't know how you do that, but I understand it. And there needs to be some sort of balance. I don't think what I did was right. I did it because I had told everybody that if you're in a desperate situation, you got to make one call. That call better be to me. Well, if you're going to say that, you better be there.
Yeah.
And I did, and I was proud of that. And I have tons of those people that 11 years after working there still call me from different locations and different jobs and say, I need your help. There's nothing better in life than that.
Mm.
But for the younger folks with families and kids and things like that, that they want that time and they need it. And I understand it. I think you've got to, as an employer per se, you got to try to find a way to help them get there as best that you can. And that's not have one person accountable for everything under the sun, but spread it out, where different people have different times and when people go on vacation, let them go on a real vacation. You got
Yeah.
enough people to back them up. There are ways the employer has to help that. I think so. I certainly understand it. That wasn't how I did it, but that was a long time ago too, and that's totally different. I think it's very important today, and and I think for those people, you got to find a way to kind of make it work. I mean, you just do. It's that important because you're not going to get them if you don't. You
Yeah.
can't, you know, 70, 80 hours a week with, okay, fine. That's not that way anymore. You know, you gotta figure out how are you going to help them with that and try to
Yeah.
meet some of their requests, as many as you can, and figure out something that that is fair. I mean, literally fair to both ends.
Yeah. I like that. That's a ideal use of the word fair, and it helps everybody keep moving forward. So I want to let everybody know you can find Danny Koontz on LinkedIn. It's Danny, Danny, and it's Koontz, Koontz. That's on LinkedIn. If you want to find him, get connected with him. Be sure to check out his podcast. It's called FM Corner. And you can find WCE, that's Windy City Restaurant Equipment Repair, at WCEcommercial.com. Danny, I want to thank you for being here with me on CMMS Radio. It was a blast.
Greg, thank you so much for having me. I really do enjoy it. I enjoy your shows. I watch them every week, and it's been fun. It's really been fun. I enjoyed it. Thank you.
I'm glad we finally got it done, and we'll be keeping an eye on everything you're doing, not just at WCE, but with FM Corner, and we'll have to get an update on that later on this year and see how everything's been going.
Absolutely. That'd be great. Thank you.
You got it. Thank you, Danny.
Mm-hmm.
Did you find this episode helpful? Please send us some feedback, suggest a topic, or ask a question. Reach out to CMMS Radio if you need a co-pilot on your CMMS project. Visit CMMSradio.com and use the What's on Your Mind link. Thank you for tuning in to CMMS Radio, your resource for all things CMMS, from selection to implementation, to help you make better choices, learn from industry experts, and have a successful CMMS journey.